Hey knitters, it's Mimi with Pastiche Knitwear, and today I'm going to teach you how to pick up stitches at the underarm to finish the sleeve on a top-down sweater. Now your pattern will give you a particular number of stitches you need to pick up, but I'm going to teach you a matrix by which you don't even have to look at your pattern. You'll be reading the knitting itself to get the proper number of stitches. So let's start by looking at these underarm stitches, and let's come in just a little bit closer here so we can see a little bit better. So when we're reading columns of knit stitches, we have a choice of whether we're going to read the stitch as a V, where the narrowest part of the stitch is at the bottom, or as a teepee, where the narrowest part of the stitch is at the top. We want to be reading V's, not teepees. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we are going to pick up in the first V here of the cast on stitches that we did under the two strands. You always want to pick up two strands, not one, because one is sloppy and you can have holes. Doesn't look good. So sometimes it's a little difficult to get started or see. And if that's the case, let your eye drop down into that column and then you can follow it right back up to see where you need to be going. Now, sometimes too, when you're trying to find that very first stitch, it can be a little bit tricky, but here's another thing. If I look to the column to the right and I follow that up, it goes into the body. So I don't want to pick that up. It's the very first one that corresponds to the cast on. So what we're going to be doing is picking up stitch for stitch in every V all the way across. Now years ago I took a finishing class from the designer Chris Bilsma, and she described this as putting the olive in the martini glass, which is a brilliant word picture. I love it. So you're putting your needle in the base of that V, which is the martini shape. Okay, so we're going to be picking up all the way across. Now in this technique I'm going to show you, we're actually going to be picking up an extra stitch on each end, which is going to address the holes that happen always when you're transitioning from these live stitches to the picked up stitches. It's just endemic to top-down sweaters. You're always going to have a hole here. So you could come afterwards and close it up on the inside, but this technique, you can do it all at once. Just do a little bit of an extra stitch here, and then we're going to decrease it away. Okay, so we know what we're going to be doing here. Now let me show you how to identify the extra stitches that we're going to be doing, and we'll get started. So what we're going to do is look at the first stitch here of the live stitches. And if I let my eye drop down here, I can see this column, and I can also see that there's a column, one more column to the left of that. And I'm going to follow that all the way down to the edge, and that's where I'm going to pick up my first stitch right here in this last stitch, and you can see it has this little crossed over bit, and that's what we want. So now I'm going to take my live end, my new yarn that I'm joining, just make a loop and drop it over, and then just bring this over to create the new stitch. So that's my extra stitch. Now we're going to go back and we're going to be picking up stitch for stitch in our V's. Now sometimes, I've taught this for years, and some of my students have found it easier to identify where they're not going, which is kind of an interesting thing. So here's our first, let's locate our first. This is my column of V's, and I'm going to be coming in underneath here, just bringing the yarn around as if I'm knitting, and then just creating the new stitch. Now you're going to be hopping over a teepee to get into the next V. And this was what I was beginning to say about some of my students have found that easier to locate, to hop over the teepee to get into the next V. So we're just coming all the way across, stitch for stitch. Now this is why you don't have to worry about what number of stitches your pattern tells you, because we're just going to pick up stitch for stitch, and when we run out of V's, we'll be finished. Okay, almost there. We've got one more. Let me scoot these guys down. Here's my last V. And then we're going to find the same corresponding column over here. Going to turn it just a little bit. Here's the first stitch on this left-hand needle, and there is a column to the right of that. I'm going to follow that out to the edge, And here's the thing, you can see this one, but I don't want just one strand. I always want to get two, so I'm just going to back up just a little bit into that one. And that is my last stitch I need to pick up. So now I'm going to work around the rest of the sleeve and come back, and I'm going to meet you on the other side, and I'm going to show you how to do our decreases. Okay, we are back around, and I have stopped one stitch short of the first stitch that we picked up, that extra stitch. You can tell because that's where the tail end is. So we want to do a right leaning decrease, which is a knit two together. So we're just going to take these two and knit them off together. Then we are going to knit all the way across the stitches that we picked up. And then on the other end, we're going to do an SSK, which is a left leaning decrease, and that will take away the extra stitch we did on that side. I got a couple more here. Okay, so now I'm just going to do an SSK, slip one as if to knit, slip another as if to knit, left needle tip through the front of both, and we knit them off together. And let's just knit a couple more to get clear of that. And there we have our picked up stitches with no holes. Now this guy over here might look a little bit open, but that's where the live end is, so you're going to tighten that up. And it's so pretty. It's such a great way to do it. Now the other thing is this. Sometimes patterns will tell you to start picking up the stitches in the middle of the armhole. And I just don't do that because I'm lazy. I think it's easier to do it from right to left. However, what you'll want to do is just set a stitch marker here in the center of these stitches, because you probably will have some decreases to do on your sleeve. So I hope you give this a try, and I hope this video has been helpful. If it has, please consider subscribing and sharing. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks, and happy knitting.